today.
Oh, it's crazy today.
I'm not complaining.
Yeah, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
You like it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
It's really running.
Two.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Look, Mike's got that.
Is that what's really running? Are you
No, because it's social distancing.
Are you going to have camera as well?
Yeah, but I'm going to go and after.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to come over.
I think we'll have a break about 7:30.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a bit of a break. Yeah. I think
Half
we'll
eight,
leave. Yeah, 8:30, sorry. Assalamualaikum, afternoon everyone, just about to go live on air in the next few minutes. Today we have a perfect show for those of you who are self-employed, who are in business. We've got the experts in-house. So after many weeks of negotiation, we've got the two big hitters from the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce to come and talk about the variety and the array of support that they are going to be talking about. So please get your questions in, get your comments in as well. So in the meantime, enjoy Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Can't be with Nusrat.
Yeah. Is that Sigma in them lot?
Say again?
The Sigma lads.
Javed, that's right, from your offices, that's right, Javed, that's right, yeah.
What's the other guy's name?
Oh, that's a
No,
good question.
he's really good, man.
But, oh, yeah, that's
Very
right.
good, yeah.
We had him,
last
Zafran. There was another account, Azim's from Warwick Road or Stony Lane.
Okay.
Young lad there, and he was very good as well. He came at the start of lockdown.
Okay.
Very knowledgeable, so
Yeah.
very
The
impressed by
Rasta
him.
as well.
Yeah. So again?
The Rasta from
You are some,
Sigma,
okay.
yeah.
When are you going on
Where's my jacket? What was that?
when are you going on
Thursday.
Everybody, you know.
Thursday.
It's a Zoom, right?
Yeah, oh thank you. I've spoken to Dal already.
Yeah, he's emailed today actually.
Yeah, he's yeah, 10:40ish.
In the morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think you're on ZMC.
So, I have no idea who the chap was. He just pulled up in the car there.
Oh, that's
Was it?
Azam.
He just pulled up in the
Sister,
car there.
isn't it? Sister.
Yes.
Yeah, Azam.
And he was on ZMC as well.
Yeah, ZMC
Nice bit.
on Sunday. So he's
What did he-
Kurt Lawrence Listers down the road. He's in Amina's building now.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah, that's where.
That's where the...
Yeah.
Yeah. Sunday, I think.
Yeah, Sunday.
Yeah.
It's Abid show.
Is it?
Abid, I think he hosts it, doesn't he?
Is it that one?
We're going to go live in there, guys.
Is it?
Assalamu alaikum, good evening. My name is Mr. Ali. It's the time of the week, Tuesday evening between the hours of 8 to 9 p.m. when the Radio Aapki Awaaz Community Wellbeing Show goes live on air. And I hope you're well and enjoying the scorching weather that we have. I must say that this probably is the hottest weather that I've certainly experienced this year, 2020. And they say that there is no global warming. So there you have it. And just sort of walking, driving past Birmingham. MashaAllah, you guys out there are really taking advantage of the Boris Johnson's scheme about the 50% discount, and all the restaurants are absolutely beaming to the rafters. So guys, a bit too much really. So we still, as always, will remind you, please social distancing, wear your gloves, wear your masks as at all times. And you'll be asking what we have got in store for you today. We have, I used to remember them through a different name, but now they are named as Asian Business Chamber of Commerce. We have the president, Qasim, Majid. Welcome to the studios of Radio Aapki Awaaz. And halfway through, we'll have the more glamorous and the better half, Neelam, Afzal, who is part of Wellbeing Solicitors and also part of the executive board of ABCC, who will also come in and take the show to even higher level that the first half is. But anyway, let's move everything to one side. So today we're going to talk about some of the news that were published today, whereby the government announced that the last 3 months through the ONS announced a further 730 1,000 people have been added to the unemployment list. However, nationally, the unemployment is still around the 3.9%, simply because of the fantastic furlough scheme and the government support package that Rishi Sunak announced early in the lockdown. But one thing that I must also add is that the West Midlands in particular is the worst performing region out of all of them. So in terms of where we were before lockdown, we were at roughly 0.6%, but that's gone down to 4.4% in terms of how much people have been added to the unemployment list. So West Midlands has been hardest hit, but anyway, we'll sort of cover that in due course. But before, I think I want to ask Qasim, maybe just for those of us that are not familiar with the ABCC, just gives a bit of a background, and also, you know, I mentioned that you're a president as well. What does that actually entail and involve?
Okay, so thank you first of all, Ali, for inviting us on the show. Really appreciate this, and it's a great reason why we're here today. So let me just give you a little bit of background to the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce, which started back in 1987 off the back of the Handsworth riots, where business people came together. We're probably now 34th year now, 34 years now we've been going, and it was, you know, it was off the back of those riots that business people came together from the city, approached the Chamber of Commerce because they wanted a collective voice. Back then, the issues of business were a stark difference to where we are now in a digital world. I mean, I didn't live in Birmingham in 1987. I know many of my colleagues did.
We can tell from your accent.
very different place. I know business was a very different place, and that's moved and morphed into, you know, we've done many things, and you know, I'm so proud to be president of the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce, and we're part of the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. And Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce has regions and it has themes, and the ABCC is a theme brand of the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. So when you're a member, you get all the benefits of the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce.
Sure.
And really our mantra as an organisation is three things: connect, support and grow businesses. And that's really the fundamental kind of strategy of the Chamber, as well as, you know, many other things. We've got a very wide reach, both locally, nationally and internationally as well, and we lobby government, and many other things that have been put in place now during this coronavirus pandemic are some of the things that our members have been telling us what they need and the support they need, and we've been lobbying government to expedite that support.
Do you want to just touch a bit more about some of the feedback that you've had from your members and also businesses that aren't your members as well, in terms of what sort of support, what sort of issues and obstacles are they facing?
Well, I mean, in terms of speaking from an Asian business perspective, because we look from an Asian business point of view, there are nuances in Asian businesses in terms of their support, specific support, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But just looking from a wider Chamber perspective, the Chamber's got over 3,000 members, and we've got a newsletter that goes out to 15,000 people every single day, and our social media reach is in the millions. So in terms of the support was typically, you know, right at the beginning was, you know, the furlough support that we're talking about, how we're going to support our employees, how we're going to keep business moving. That's been one of our key mantras over the last 5 months now since lockdown happened. How do we keep that business moving forward? And also what's been really come to the fore, particularly now, is what's going to happen as this unlock starts to ease. And I'm sure you'll kind of agree with me that, you know, we're really in an uncertain time.
Absolutely.
I mean, when we had lockdown, we knew exactly what we were doing. But now as the unlock has started to happen and these second spikes that are happening, I think the atmosphere around businesses is still a little bit unsure. Now, coming on to some of the nuances around Asian businesses, what we felt was a real important thing for us to do, and that's why we're here today, was we put out, the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce put out an initiative called Mind the Gaps. And that was to help those businesses and those individuals that are falling through the gaps, whether you're self-employed, you're a director that takes dividends, and you know you're going to lose income, etc., etc. How do we look after those people? And what's happened off the back of the wider business community is that what we've found, and it's really concerning, is that there's Asian businesses or businesses from an ethnic minority background, not just Asian businesses, but businesses of BAME. Because, as you know, Birmingham is a very eclectic place and very diverse place. So what's happened is we've been hearing from a lot of our members and non-members, and our support that we're going to talk about a little bit later is for members and non-members, is those businesses that we call are hard to reach.
Yeah.
That are in those areas, such as where we are right now in Allen Rock, Spark Hill, Handsworth, and some of the areas that people don't really go to, some of the business communities that may not really engage with the wider business support that's out there. So what we decided was, how do we get to those people? And that's why we're here today. And some of the concerns that they have, and what we've been hearing, is they're getting the wrong advice from so-called experts.
Yep.
They're being charged for bounce back loans, which is a huge issue. If you go to banks now, all you have to do is apply, and you'll get a bounce back loan for particularly if you fall into the criteria. CBILS, how do they go about that? HR's being a big area, which is Neelam's field of expertise, employment, finance, legal, some of the legal aspects, and also some of the marketing aspects. So as you see, a lot of businesses now, they've moved to the online space. And how do you get the right advice to be able to face those challenges?
So I just want to come in there, Qasim. I agree with you in terms of what you're doing in terms of this initiative, Mind the Gap, trying to get to those that may not be digital or online, may have a language barrier to some of the services that may be on offer. So how are you actually getting to some of the businesses that may be on a high street such as Allen Rock, or on Soho Road, or on Ladypoo Road? What's your network like on grassroots level on these sort of businesses?
Well, this is why we're here today. And before the lockdown ease started, it was very difficult to get to those hard to reach businesses. Because traditionally you'll find it's through the religious institutions, through the mosques, through the gurdwaras, through the temples, etc., where you speak to community leaders, but people weren't coming together. So it's very difficult. So now what we're doing is we're speaking to people like radio.
Absolutely, perfect platform.
Awaaz, it's local, it's very concentrated. Speak to people like you.
Fantastic.
Speak to television channels. Go through the traditional media, papers, leaflet drops, and community leaders. So important for some of those community leaders, counsellors, people from religious institutions to really get on board with this and say, look, we've got some impartial support that we are providing. Whether you have an HR issue, whether you have an employee issue, you have a finance issue, grants, what grants are available, and they're coming up. There's some discretionary grants right now with Birmingham City Council that people can apply for, and what we want to do is be able to signpost those people to get the right advice.
No, that's great, and that's what we want to do. So guys, if you have any questions for, is it okay if we call it Qasim? Qasim or Qas, please, whatever you favour. If you want to dial in, the number is 01216829735, or alternatively you can sort of dial your comments and we will pass those on. You can find us online, www.rpawaaz.co.uk. We are also downloadable on an app called Radio Garden and various other apps as well. So please join in, make this a two-way dialogue. And you don't have these sort of experts every day on your fingertips, so please do take full advantage of them. I'm just going to pick up on a point that you mentioned about the term of the day is now BME. So for those people that may be non-Pakistani or non-Pakistani or non-Asian, how is the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce representative of some of their needs? So if I'm talking about the black community, we know what they're going through in terms of the Black Lives Matter, and the certainly trying to get their cause higher on the agenda.
So in terms of the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce, many of our members are from non-Asian backgrounds. So for us as an organisation, the support that we're giving through this coronavirus support, the Mind the Gap scenario, it's open to all businesses. It's not just specifically Asian businesses. So if you're from the Somali community, you're from the Romanian community, the Polish community, etc., some of those what I would call hard to reach communities, they're the ones that we're providing support to as well as the Asian community as well.
No, that's great to hear. So we know initially when the whole lockdown was announced, a lot of these forms for the self-employed, for the businesses were all online, and not everyone's IT savvy. People were sort of really being taken advantage of in terms of having that form wasn't complicated, but just people were afraid. And they were paying extortionate amounts to accountants. Now that's, we've had some changes from the 1st of August, and there's going to be further changes whereby employers, the self-employed who are paying some of their workforce, they are taking more and more of the burden from the government. So it is going to be difficult, and at the same time we know that different sectors, as you mentioned, have different nuances. So entertainment, the hospitality sector are certainly sort of having the a lot more of the hit than maybe some of the other retail, where they're seeing a real boom into their business as well. So I suppose are you taking what I'm trying to get to is, are you trying to take a sort of a one size fits all, or is this a sort of bespoke approach depending on the needs of the business?
Absolutely, you hit the nail right on there. It's not just specifically to industry sector, but it's specific to the individual business. Yeah. And each individual business will have different needs and they'll have different challenges. But in terms of our experience of how we can signpost them, what we can do is provide them with the right expertise, and that's why the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce board, and Neelam's just there, socially distancing.
Absolutely, yes.
We've got the right experts from the legal profession, the finance profession, the marketing profession, the HR profession, accountancy profession, to give you impartial advice. And because the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce is independent,
sure,
you're going to get the right advice.
Absolutely.
We've got no axe to grind. We've got no money to make. What we're about is to give the right advice to the businesses, because we've seen the wrong advice being given.
Absolutely, and it's important to have a credible organisation like yourselves being there at the front line, giving the right advice, which can be, potentially the difference between a business going bust and a business, going through these difficult and uncertain times. So, you mentioned about, members and non-members. Mm-hmm. This particular, the initiative that you have in mind, the Gap, is it available to everyone, or is it available to members only? And what's this membership as well? Is it, what sort of fees?
We'll talk about that, but let's. I mean, in terms of our initiative, in terms of Mind the Gap, it's open to all businesses.
Fantastic.
It's open to all businesses. We want to help as many businesses as possible, giving them the right advice. This is all about us going out to the community and saying we're here to help you.
So talking about this initiative, Mind the Gap, please, if you can, in nice, simple sort of bullet points, I think that would be appropriate as well. So if you can tell us a bit more, and in terms of how we can get that disseminated onto people that really need it as well. So, is it available digitally, different languages as well?
It's available digitally as well, so you can go onto the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, I think it's /ABCC, but also, because we wanted to get to these hard to reach businesses that traditionally use the old school of communication, we've got a telephone number. So we've got a telephone number, and it's running till the end of September.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We're 3 weeks in, and if I give you the number, it's 0121.
Yeah.
We call it a hotline number. 0121 274 3280, and I think probably afterwards we'll give you that number that you can get out and just pick up the phone to us. And also what we're doing in different languages.
Oh, fantastic. Is that available 24/7, or is it business hours?
Business hours,
business
hours, yeah.
Fantastic. No, that's fine. And okay, so, in terms of Mind the Gap, you said, it's, real hard-hitting information available to businesses on the ground, some of those hard to reach. Do you want to sort of tell us a bit more about what that initiative actually entails?
So the other thing that's really important is the GBS LEP, which is the Greater Birmingham
Local
Enterprise Partnership.
Yes.
They're partnering with us
on
this as well. So it's really important that, even from a regional perspective, we've got the support of the region as well. So in terms of the support that we're offering, it's advice around grants, what grants are available, and it's important that people get in right now, because the grant scheme, the discretionary grant scheme, is going to be finished in the next couple of weeks. In fact, it might be next week. So it's really important that people do that. Any banking needs that people have, we've got people on our board that are from Metro Bank.
Yeah.
In fact, our current Vice President, Lakbir Singh, is one of the regional directors of Metro Bank.
Yeah.
And Metro Bank are really being proactive in terms of opening new accounts and offering bounce back loans. If your existing bank is not offering that, then we've got Metro Bank on board. We've got Neelam really giving advice around HR and employment, with Omar as well, who's an HR consultant who's on our board. We've got Amina, who's an accountant, that's giving advice around money, figures, etc., etc. We've also got the FA they're involved as well. So Dal's on our board. He heads up our diversity and inclusion, and he's doing a lot of work around that and just kind of really pushing out the message. And also, it's not just for businesses, but also charities as well. So people in the third sector as well.
But a lot of these religious institutions that you mentioned, they're all charities, and they've seen a big hit in their income, as you can imagine, because they were closed. So for those of you that are involved in any kind of charity or some of the religious organisations that you are running, you've had your doors closed, you've had your congregation sort of not been able to come, and hence why there's a big decrease in your income. And if you want to tap into some of these grants that Cassie is talking about, then again, please get your questions in, and at the end we will give that that support number again. Do take advantage of that. So read a comment actually. Qasim Saab giving excellent advice, very passionate and awesome person. Thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule to come out onto this program. We salute you. Every blessings to you. So thank you, Javed. Thank you for your positive comments as well. So thank you. That's very appreciative. If you've got any comments with regards to your self-employed status, or whether you are on furlough, if there's any questions that you want to ask, please ask Qasim away. And in the second half of the program, we will have Neelam as well. So we've still got another 40 minutes to go as well. So you mentioned about the support hotline. You mentioned about that you've got a vast array of experts and advocates that in their specialism and their fields that are able to give advice, and that's what we need. So if I wanted HR advice, I want to go to an HR expert. If I wanted some advice around the accountancy, around the tax and so on, then you want to go to an accountant.
Absolutely,
and so on. So that's absolutely nice to sort of see. So that's one part. Is there anything more that you want to sort of talk about this particular scheme and incentive that you've got?
I think just building out on that. Neelam will talk a bit more in detail around people from what happens with employed status, tax assessments from income, VAT deferment. So these are specific things, time to pay, what happens if you're self-employed with your income support scheme, etc., etc. So these are the kind of subject matter experts that we've got waiting to provide the community with advice, and also how you move from maybe bricks and mortar, from bricks to clicks. How you're moving to the online space. We can give advice around that, what you're supposed to do, how you go about it, etc., etc. So let's talk about now. Obviously, we know that we got to use an alternative source to reach out to people, and at the moment the current thing is Zoom, Teams, for us to do digital meetings. How has ABCC embraced the digital world in order to get some of their messages to some of those that are online? Well, from a wider chamber's perspective, our keep business moving hashtag has been like going out every single day, and what we've seen is a huge increase in our social media activity. And one of the things that I always say, and I run several digital agencies. One of the things that we've been advising a lot of our clients and members is about oscillation. So oscillate between attention, interest, desire, action. So oscillate between attention and interest. Keep putting out information about your brand, about what you're doing, because people, once we come out of this, will remember you. The thing not to do is stop everything.
Or go under the radar.
Do not go under the radar. Keep putting out information and help as many people as possible, because people will remember this. And you look at some of the brands that have got it right. Some of the big brands that have got it right. and some of the big brands that we really looked up to. I'm not going to mention the names.
No, please.
Yeah?
No.
I'm not going to mention the names who have got it absolutely wrong. And you know what? People will vote with their feet. And we got to learn from these lessons that we've had over the last 4 or 5 months now.
No, you're right, and I think there's something called transparency and being there through the tough times if you're going to be sort of there also through the good times as well. And it's a big word, isn't it? T for trust. And that with some companies, unfortunately, what their rhetoric is and what they're actually doing is too far. So there's two different things as well. So someone has also mentioned something. Okay, Neely Khan, glorious work and incentive by Cass and the entire team at the ABC. Thank you, Neely. Appreciate that. Kramat, thank you, sir. Hope you're well. From bricks to clicks. I like it. I needed this advice when I first set up my self-employment business 20 years
Absolutely,
ago. Yeah, so fantastic. Profile is the key in my experience. Stay in front of them and in their mind. Absolutely, I agree with you. Kramasov, who has a vast wealth of experience as well. So I'm going to also sort of mention about, that you mentioned, people that are, and maybe this is more appropriate for Neelam, for those of us who are maybe furloughed and having to now sort of maybe move on to some of the benefits that are there, for example, unemployment benefit, maybe the universal credit as well, and they're fearful of their jobs now. Is there any sort of training that you're given in order for those people that maybe need to upskill or adapt themselves to the changing environment that we find ourselves in?
It's definitely one of the things that the Chamber is lobbying government, working with some of the key regional stakeholders.
Sure.
West Midlands Combined Authority, GBS LEP, is how do we tackle the issue of what's going to happen in September and October. And the stark reality is that we are going to see many people that are going to be unemployed. It's very, very unfortunate. But you know what? The support is there. The support is there. Give us a call. We'll talk to you. We'll advise you on what we can do for you, for your business, and specifically maybe for some individuals as well.
Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand. I know everyone's worried about their sort of their health and the fact that they want to, certainly those who have underlying conditions, maybe elderly who live in multi-generational homes, making sure that they don't catch coronavirus at all. But now I think the economic impact is certainly being felt and being feared by a lot of people. They are worried about their jobs, certainly the long-term prospects as well. So the government has also introduced this £1,000 sort of bonus sort of scheme whereby anyone that is on furlough, that they will give £1,000 for that individual to come back. I just want to get your thoughts about, some people were saying that that may have been misplaced. That should have been given to those people that are unemployed and are sort of, need that money to be retrained. So what are your thoughts? Do companies need that £1,000, or would that have been better sort of directed for those people that are looking for jobs?
It's a really good question.
Thank you.
So my look, the government are providing as much support as absolute humanly possible. Whatever support's out there, I think for businesses is to investigate it, find how it can help you. It's better than having nothing. That's what I would say. It's better than having nothing. And how the employer utilises that is down to the individual employer. Now, as you see, you've probably seen in the press, it's good, it's bad. From our perspective, there is support there. But what's important is that you plan now for what's going to happen in the next 60 to 90 days.
Absolutely.
And that's so important.
So Qasim, a lot of businesses are complaining the fact that they've had their doors closed. It's been tough out there,
really tough. And
now they've having to have a duty of care, safeguard not only their employees but also their customers as well. They've had to invest in these perspex sort of plastic sort of coverings, face masks, and all the other sort of duty of care equipment that they've had to sort of put in place. And these are sort of safeguard measures that they've had to absorb. Is there anything that you would sort of say to them, or is there any way that the government or any other sort of incentive scheme that that they are able to sort of maybe sort of tap into to sort of help them sort of carry out some of those expenses that they're having to incur?
In terms of the PPE and the safety of employees, that is absolutely, and customers, absolutely paramount, as you know.
Yeah.
It's really important that we observe government guidelines. So I'm all for it. It's really important. And yes, it is a cost that businesses have to bear. What I would advise, and what we're speaking to, particularly at central government level, is how we can provide support for some of these businesses to implement some of that thing. So over the next coming weeks, you'll start to see information around some support, whether that's how to grow your business, and there are grants available, through Birmingham City Council, through various schemes. If you're looking to grow your business, if you're looking to innovate, there are some schemes out there.
Yes.
So what I will do is call that hotline number and find out what is available. In fact, I was having a call this morning with someone that is consultancy business, and they're moving into an online space as part of that business, and they're hoping to get some grant funding for that project. So there are schemes out there, and there are experts in the Chamber of Commerce that can help you and signpost you towards these grants.
Absolutely. And the sort of people that I'm thinking about are your taxi drivers that work sort of in the transport sector, some of your takeaways, small retail shops that may not know how to go about some of these grants, and put in a perspex covering, the face masks, which are now compulsory. Whoever goes into a retail store, these are sort of costs, and people were asking, what support is there, and the fact that you've got this hotline, I'm going to give that number out again, 0121 274 3280. Please call that between the business hours, and there are different avenues that you can sort of apply to. So don't think for one moment that you are on your own. And we also have ABCC, who have experts there to aid you through this difficult period. And the other thing is also what we find is, certainly within the Asian community, is that it's not just one person on their own. A lot of family commitment is there. You have maybe 3 generations of people working in the same business. And we know, obviously, the younger people know English, but some of the elder ones still need to be brought onto this journey, and English is not their first language. So whether it's Somalian, Bengali, Gujarati, Mirpuri, not everything needs to be in English. Is there anything that you have in terms of your materials available that some of the elderly people can also have a look at and say, look, this is something that I'd be interested in, and maybe sort of be able to read for themselves rather than always relying on their son or daughter or so on?
Yeah, so the business support, one of the first things that we did with this particular business support was to provide it in mother tongue languages, so Urdu, Punjabi, Bengali, Bangla. Some of the other more, obviously, exotic languages we haven't covered off. However, what we want to do is approach the people in the community that can speak English, that then can disseminate that message to some of those communities. And as you know, Birmingham, it's a very, very eclectic, glorious city. We live in an amazing city, and we want to get this city moving. And the business community is really behind this to get this city moving and to get the economy moving. And actually a lot of the entrepreneurship, we're in the hotbed of startup businesses outside of London. Birmingham is the #1 startup venue or city for businesses. And a lot of that's from the Asian community, because we're very, very entrepreneurial. We're very entrepreneurial, so that support is for those people.
I know, Cass, it is difficult for a lot of people out there in terms of their health, but at the same time, this has given a perfect platform for people to sort of reflect and think about what's really important for them, both in terms of their personal lives as well, but also in terms of what they want to do in terms of having a meaningful, ethical income. And people are now thinking about, diversifying, going in and retraining and going into something new. So, if you are thinking about starting up a new business, do you want to sort of maybe elaborate or go into a bit more detail in sort of what support or what advice is there for those people that may be having the confidence to go into it, but not having the support network or the experts there to sort of guide them through the first few stages?
I think there's a couple of things that you mentioned there. Really important word that you mentioned was ethical. It's really important during this time, whether you're an existing business or you're going to be starting up in business, that you keep the ethics. There's a lot of businesses out there from the wider community and the Asian community that have taken advantage of some of the situations again. It's really important that we stick to what the government says and does because, as you know, you've got to play the long game in business. So that's really important that you mentioned that word ethical. It was something that I was going to touch upon a bit later, but we'll cover it off now. The second part is in terms of support. Whether you're a startup, a growing business, or a corporate business, and we've got a lot of corporate businesses, big businesses. Each business has different needs at different stages of their evolution. The Chamber of Commerce covers that complete spectrum. So complete spectrum, whether you're a startup and you need advice, you want to network, you want to meet like-minded people on your journey, and you want to meet people that are further on in your journey, we've got the advice, the support and guidance, and we've got the people that have been there, done it, and got the t-shirt. So like I said, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, wherever you are in your business evolution, we've got the advice and the support and the expertise and the minds to be able to provide very comprehensive support.
Thank you, Cass. Just going to read out a couple of comments. So Dr. Karamat has come back, said, coping with uncertainty now means that you will be even more resilient in the future. Absolutely. Well said. Your vast experience is certainly coming to the front here, Dr. Karamat. If you have time on your hands, could you use the time for further learning? Absolutely. A lot of people have, I know a lot of people who've never picked up a book for decades and more, where they've used this 4 or 5 months now to pick up books and sort of go online and sort of retrain themselves, and I think that's fantastic to hear.
Just a point to pick up there, there's a lot of our friends and members that have had some staff on furlough, but what they've done is they've used that time and energy, particularly employers, to help them retrain in certain areas in their business. Absolutely. Which is one thing that you can do. Whilst you're on furlough, you can train, so that's a really big important message. No,
absolutely. Zaf Khan, Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Ali, Qasim and Neelam. So Zaf Khan is giving you his salam. Grammar Iqbal, back to the point about, he said bilingualism is desirable, so having the English version and the second sort of mother language, so to speak, but competency in English is essential. Absolutely. Dr. Grammar, there's no sort of getting away from that, but it's nice to sort of know, as Cassie said, that we're trying to cover everyone. We don't want anyone falling below the safety net, and if that means producing literature in another language, I think that they've made a wise choice in that. So fantastic for ABCC to put that investment in. Another word for ethical is halal. So thank you. My education helped me to pick up myself after 2 redundancies. Again, it's not an easy time, and that's where you need that support network to let you know that this is not the end of the world, and a lot of people are going through uncertain times at the moment. So yeah, absolutely. So I think, Cass, unless you've got any sort of last few,
I think if you've got any questions, if you need support, the advice is absolutely free of charge. We'll signpost you to the right people. Whether it's finance, go back to finance, HR, banking, marketing. We're a big area at the Chamber of Commerce right now, and this is a really great opportunity for businesses to think outside of the box. What's happening in a few months. We're going to have the transition, which is now what it's called. It's not called Brexit anymore. It's called the transition. So if you think about international markets, you've got a great international department of the Chamber of Commerce, that does, documentation, different languages, etc., that we can help some of those businesses explore new markets as well.
Thank you, Cass. So that is the current president of the ABCC, the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce. So we are now sort of coming into a break. We just need a cool glass of water just to sort of calm down with the humid weather that we're having. And then the second half, we've got the lovely Neelam, who's going to come in and take over the hot seat. So enjoy the Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Come over, Neelam. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Cass.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
No. Great show. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Really appreciate it. This is all right.
Yeah. Sit wherever you want to. Really. Yeah. I think you got the fan next to you, so I think that may be the right place.
Oh.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's a natural. Yeah.
Probably on the spot a little bit.
You covered off quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it might be around specifics that would be really good for you to talk about, around employment. Some of the things that you're seeing right now and what's important.
Is this for your client?
Oh, no, I'm okay. Yeah, it's fine. Is that a bit too high or?
It's okay, just when you speak, just come near to it.
Okay.
Because obviously my thing is just a bit more generic, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. A bit more.
If you want kind of some more around specific things or what people and what you're experiencing right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff that you're really good at. Really good at.
Okay, well, I'm not
One of the things that certainly comes to my mind, Neelam, is those people that are at the moment on furlough.
Yes.
The government is taking the weight of it,
Yes.
and technically there's nothing wrong with it. But as soon as furlough finishes,
What happens then?
and there's a good chance that some companies who are unscrupulous,
Yes.
who may then go on to put those people on redundancy. I'm
Yes.
thinking back to that point about ethical. Legally they haven't done anything wrong,
We're
but
still going to go through all the fair processes to go
that's right,
and
so-
the legal tests that apply. So
yeah. And also, certainly in the early part of the furlough, a lot of people, also a lot of employers were getting rid of some of those staff that they didn't want, and they use this whole COVID as an excuse to say, look, hey, we just can't afford you, and so is going. So, again, it'd be nice to touch on what's their HR, and their sort of employment rights really. Whether that has been negated now or dissolved because of COVID, or whether it's still got put. Absolutely, and that's what we want to sort of reassure. So, guys, we're just on our ad break at the moment, so about 30 seconds, and then we've got Neelam who's going to talk about some of the more practical and sort of maybe personal experiences or anecdotes that she has. So, yeah, indeed. So hello, welcome to part 2 of the Community Wellbeing Show, and today is all about the COVID business support that is being offered by the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce, who have been around for more than 30 years. Qasim assures me, who was in the first half of the show. He is the current president, and he spent the first half talking about what the role of the ABCC has been over the last 4 months, and a new initiative that has been launched called the Mind the Gap. I'm going to go straight into it. We have now Neelam Afzal. I know you as someone from Wellbeing Solicitors, but you also have a different hat. You are also part of the executive board at the ABCC. So first of all, welcome to the studios of Radio Awaaz, Neelam. Thank you. Yeah, walaikum salam. So just talk a bit louder if you can, please, Neelam. So we were talking about, obviously now, people were put on furlough, and a lot of people were sort of complaining about the fact that they've been, certainly in the early parts of furlough, because your sort of expertise is around HR. So I'm just going to sort of go straight into that if I can, where the employees have used that as an excuse to get rid of some of their employees that may not be in their best books. Alternatively, the other one I was going to say was those that are sort of unscrupulous employers that may take full advantage of the furlough scheme until the end of October, and then just get rid of them. And I want to know whether those people are protected by any employment rights.
So we still have employment rights that apply, and they will still continue to apply regardless of furlough.
Yeah.
So we still have the process of going through a fair redundancy process, selecting people for redundancy correctly, how it's done, making sure that we're not discriminatory in any way, that we're looking at. So when we start a redundancy process, there's got to be a genuine business reason, and you still need to have that in place. Is there a decline in profits? Is that expected to continue? Can we make people part-time? Look at other options. Can we reduce some hours to part-time, shorter working, flexible working? Maybe save on overheads, because look, we've got a new way of working now. We work from home, and we've cut a lot of overheads. So it's looking across your business and working out, okay, what can I do? And perhaps look at redundancy as a last resort, because that's what ideally it should be. It should be the last resort, and go across your business and see how can you cut costs to avoid redundancy. Then what you would need to do is look at your processes. So hopefully businesses, if they don't have redundancy policies in place, processes in place, and they would go through consultations depending on the size of the workforce that's being made redundant. You still need to have a fair reason, you still need to have a fair process, and you still need to go through that selection process. So i.e., if you have 10 roles and you only have 5 left, you need to apply for those 5 roles, but you still have a fair and transparent process, because you need to, the idea is you want to retain your staff. After this is all over, your business, hopefully will be back where it is. So you'll go back to the staff that you've trained, you've upskilled. You want to bring them back as well. So it's to maintain that good relationship.
Absolutely, great point there by Neelam, who's an HR expert really, is that, think long term. Hopefully sooner rather than later we will get over this, and it is very expensive, in terms of time and effort and costs that, employers bear in terms of training up to staff. Do you really want to get rid of, people that you want to keep that may be needed in 3-4 months down the line, and, forsake the need to sort of retrain everyone? So great point in there. And the other thing that I'm also going to mention was that, we talk about the need for the health implications, but a lot of people are going through real stress. There's mental health implications as well. As your role in the ABCC, is that something that your sort of organisation has thought about, or has sort of put sort of maybe measures in place, or have certain be able to sort of signpost people in the right direction?
Well, we talked about provide this incentive which provides support to members and non-members.
Sure.
And the idea is that, when we were in furlough, and people that are still going through furlough, is to reach out and be able to have someone to talk to. So my own experiences have been that people are concerned about their jobs, which affects their mental health, and they just need someone to talk to. They're sitting at home, they're not sure, because there's so much information available on the internet. Because one of the things that happened with employment law, and I'm sure most areas, even in finance, was that the information was coming through piecemeal, and the government was doing the best that they can to get the information across. But it was being legislated and put in place as it was going along. And it was adapting to the situation, the scenarios that were happening on the ground. So it was forever evolving, and further transparency or guidance was coming through in time. It's quite a lot of information for people to take. So again, people are reading stuff and they're worried about what do we do, how do we go about this, how do I, businesses were talking about how do we apply for furlough. So they need just someone to reach out to talk to, and part of this incentive is that they will get the experts on hand to talk to about that particular scenario. And we've, in my experience, as an employment solicitor, we've had a lot of businesses reach out, individuals reach out, just to get some sort of peace of mind about what the options are, how to go about those options, and what they are trying to achieve. And ultimately, for businesses, it's about surviving as well. For employees, it's the same, to put bread and butter on their table, but how do they go about, if there was a redundancy process, is it fair? What do I get at the end of it? And unfortunately, we have, in my experience, we have found that mental health, there are lots of experts that we have, as part of the chamber, and members who can give that support through this incentive.
So the thing that sort of comes to my mind is when you were talking about change of contract terms, is the famous example of the British brand is British Airways, who a lot of people last Friday were made or took redundancy because their change of contract meant that they're going to be earning 50% of what they were sort of doing pre-COVID. Something like that, where because of the business need, they're saying that they were earning something like, I think it was £16 million per month. That went down to sort of a couple of £100,000, and they just weren't able to sustain themselves. In that situation, can the employer use the fact that there's been a big decrease in the income as an excuse to sort of go through some of what you said about some of their measures and some of their processes to get rid of sort of people through changing their contracts?
So that's some variation of contracts. So basically, we talked about at the beginning, I touched on, if you can avoid a redundancies, all your staff, you will need to retain some work. So the idea is that you go through consultation periods depending on the size of the organisation and the number of people whose contracts are changing. You can do it by consent, which is often the easiest way to do this, or you can do it through consultation, having a genuine business reason, a business need. Take on board what your staff are saying. It might be, listen to what your staff are saying, because they might suggest something, and we see this in business, that you have consultations and somebody comes up with a great idea. Look, what if we did something like this? It means we could save, let's say, X or Y. Can we move forward in this way? So have meaningful consultations with your staff, and then obviously you move on to the next stage, and to do it very carefully, because the last thing as an employer, you want to breach a contract. So it's really important that you follow all of the processes. And it's the same for redundancy. Earlier this week I think it's a really good example. It was an Asian business that had come to us, and what happened was they terminated somebody's employment during the furlough period. during the furlough period. And what that resulted in was they terminated the employment, but they didn't pay anything at all. They didn't do consultations. The chap had been there 6 years. 6 years, no redundancy, no notice, no accrued holiday, no contractual payments. And I said to the chap, why did you not go through the process? Did you not? Because I really didn't know. It was somebody in business for some time, but just lack of knowledge or understanding, language issues, are a massive issue for clients, employees, or employers.
That's a real life example by Neelam. It just shows how important it is. Just because COVID is there doesn't mean that you can now push everything to one side. The statutory laws, the employment laws are still there. We need to adhere to them, and ignorance is no excuse. So if you want to know any more, you've got ABCC here, we've got this helpline. Please do sort of take advantage of it. Otherwise, this will come back to haunt you. So that's just one example. So I asked the question to Qasim earlier on. I'm going to ask you the same thing in terms of what other sort of examples or different forms of people are reaching out to ABC or to yourself in particular about how to navigate through this difficult period that we're having, that may sort of be able to people may be able to sort of relate to or empathize to that. I'm not the only one that is experiencing this, so just to give them a bit of comfort.
So what we're finding, what certainly this incentive is keeping businesses moving and supporting businesses. I, as an employment lawyer, support businesses and employees as well. I work on both sides to support them. So it's some of the issues that we're getting around are a lot around redundancies. From the helpline, from working within the community, because I work within this community and support businesses within this community. But we are there to serve the whole community and members and non-members. So it's questions around redundancy, a lot of questions. What do I get? What are my rights? I don't think this process is fair. They've not selected me properly. Can I be made redundant whilst I'm on furlough? Can I work on furlough?
Can you answer those questions actually? Can someone who's on furlough be made redundant?
Yes, they can. The answer is yes, they can. This scheme was put in place to avoid redundancies. It was there, but it is still the employer's choice. I've had a lot of employees say, I want to remain on furlough, because it gives them a few more months. Now, look, the scheme is there, and this is a very ethical, moral question, because people say, well, do you use this scheme, get to the end, and then make them redundant because something you touched on? It's not wrong, all right. The scheme is available. If your business, and it genuinely looks, it's unlikely if you go back, or it's going to go back to 100% trading, and it genuinely looks like there's a redundancy situation, then go through those motions to make somebody redundant, if that's what it is, and you've tried everything else to avoid that redundancy.
And I'm just going to sort of flip it on his head if I can. So what about, the employer wants the individual back, because things are sort of relatively going back to normal, but the individual is saying, well, why should I? I'm staying at home getting 70%, well, in September, of the wage, and I can just about get by. It's all right, I'll sit at home, thanks. Where does the employee stand, and where does the employer stand?
Well, the situation it's an interesting question. We get this all the time where staff say, I don't want to come back, quite happy sitting at home. I mean, the scheme from the employer's point of view, there's more going on, so it's 70% at the moment. In October it will be 60%. The employer can top it up to 80, or in some cases, some businesses have been generous in taking it to 100%. So in relation to that particular question, it's the employer's choice. Because what I did, and I hope that businesses have done this, and it's something that we were putting the message out, was that when furlough started, was to have an agreement in place. Because remember, you're varying their contract from 100% to 80% if that's the case.
Sure.
So ideally what was recommended was to have documentation, a furlough agreement, a furlough letter put in place. It also helps with HMRC if there's any checks, any paperwork checks, that you've got documented information. So the employer can turn around and say, well, actually, we can, and depending on what's written in there, we can give you a week's notice to bring you back to the business. But obviously one of the things that we are supporting businesses with is their return to work, because we've got risk assessments that need to be done and displayed. looking at all the measures that need to be put in place, mental health, well-being, supporting staff that are returning.
Yep.
You know, there was a great recommendation. Somebody said, you know, you could do a return to work. Just because people have been out of the business so long that, you know, do a return to work. It's very similar to when someone's off sick. Do a return to work, have a look at any issues, any anxiety, do a review. Support your staff back into the workplace. Phased return to work is another option. So there's lots of things that businesses can think, and some of it's thinking out of the box. You know, some of it's straightforward. Some of it might require, tailored, bespoke approaches to that particular business, depending on what industry they're in, depending on what they do. And this is the idea about this campaign, is that the calls that come through, they are tailored. We look at each individual circumstance. There's no set answer for every single person.
No. I suppose I'm going to be quite sort of nuanced about this, because, you know, through COVID, Asian people from a predisposition and from also a black predisposition with maybe some underlying conditions, we're more likely and more prone to get COVID, but also suffer from COVID in terms of the impact of it. You know, you've got an employer now asking you to come back, but you don't have the confidence in terms of the measures, and you also know the high risk that you're under. Can those be some of the sort of your real life examples where you can rely on under sort of employment law?
There's a lot of information, and the difficulty as employment lawyers we have is none of these cases have been tested at the moment.
That's the point.
You see, that's the point, because at the moment we've not had any cases go to a tribunal, and there's decisions that will precedents that we can rely on. But what we do have is an interpretation of the law, and different lawyers are taking different approaches as well. So in terms of my approach here, what we have is we have protection under various health and safety provisions. The right not to be dismissed if you feel that you are in imminent health and danger or health and safety issues that arise. So if you're dismissed off the back of that, because you've raised an issue about serious health and safety reasons that could danger you or others, then you are protected under the various legislation with the right not to be dismissed. So that's one. You've also got whistleblowing, right? So you've got protected interest disclosures, where if you, for example, you whistleblow and you raise a disclosure which is either breaking the law, breaching health and safety provisions, criminal offences. So, for example, the furlough, there's a lot around this at the moment about the furlough scheme where people are working and claiming. I'm not going to go into that now, but that can be also part of the whistleblowing claim.
Sure, absolutely.
You've got that. You've also got something that's indirect discrimination as well. So that falls under, it's under the Equality Act, and it's where a group of people are subjected to a detriment or a disadvantage. So the wording is disadvantage, and when we're talking about the BAME community, potentially the BAME community, because they are a group that are at a disadvantage by policies.
Or because of the characteristics, possibly.
Right,
so
you've got to be very careful on that.
Absolutely. So we've got Neelam for another, I'm going to say another 20 minutes, but we've only got 5 more minutes or so. So where has the time gone to? So, you know, you don't have a HR expert at your disposal, so please take advantage. If you want to dial in, I am covering the phone. If you want to dial in, it's 0121 682 9735. Alternatively, please put your comments and questions, and we will read out as best as we can. So a couple of points. Valuable information shared by Neelam. Thank you, Zaf. Liaquat, informative program. Well done to the team and to ABCC. Thank you. So very well needed. So so I suppose what they're saying is that, you know, where was this a couple of months ago? This is a great scheme, but it would have been nice to have that a couple of months ago. I suppose.
Well, look, the scheme is about where we are now and supporting businesses going forward. We're here until September. Hopefully it can be extended, but let's see where it goes. What we also have, when furlough kicked off, there were a lot of people providing information and support from the day one dot. When literally, I think it was the 23rd of March, my Facebook feed on LinkedIn and people who are following is splattered with information about furlough, support, questions. People have put questions, they're being directed, and what we've got is a great, we've got a lot of people out there accountants and people that work with the chamber, and
Sure.
people on the board, like we talked about, Qasim's talked about, accountants.
Absolutely.
We've got, a website, social media people, all sorts of an array of expertise who have been posting information and support. So it's been available.
Throughout.
But this is obviously it's a campaign that's launched with the Greater Birmingham and Solihull LEP.
Yeah.
And that support hasn't gone, it's still there. Look, we've got at the end of October, furlough finishing.
Yeah.
We've got all sorts of grants still appearing where people can apply for these grants. So the scheme is available.
So if someone wants to, I mean, you've given a phone number a number of times.
Yeah.
But if someone wants to get a hard copy of some of the literature that you've got sort of published or produced, how would they go about sort of getting their hands on it?
So in terms of the literature,
Some of the literature for the the new incentive scheme, which is hard to mind the gap. So I know you've got sort of different sort of materials produced.
Yeah, so we've produced in different languages.
Yeah.
So it is, you can download it off the website. So if you go onto the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce website, there is information there. We've also been posting it through our social media forums. So if you go onto my feed, go onto any of our feeds, you'll find it certainly on my feed. I've shared the literature in all the different languages. So we can post those out to people who can see those.
Yeah, most definitely. The other thing that people are really struggling with is the business rates or the rent, and they're sort of very fair for the fact that if they miss a couple of the payments, that they may renegade on their lease or on their sort of contract. What support or how can we sort of assist or reassure them that they are sort of measures in place to sort of help them, or grants available for them to sort of tap into?
Okay, so that is a bit of a commercial.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah?
Okay,
no,
sorry.
But look, what I will say is that we, I know a little bit that there's been some delay in evictions. There's all sorts of legislation. Again, this is a perfect question because you might be an individual business who might have that question. You call the number that we've provided, and you'll be put through to the right person to give you that advice. It's a property litigator, so that's the person.
No, that's fine. Just something that sort of came to my head. I know
absolutely.
a lot of people are sort of worried about that as well because of being made.
There's been a delay. I know there's been a delay in the eviction processes happening to give people that breathing space, and then there's all these other grants that obviously you can discuss to see what grants are available to support your business.
Yeah, I think you've got a bit of a fan base here. So once again, excellent presentation from Neelam, invaluable information and advice. Many thanks for taking time out your busy schedule to come on the program. Every blessings to you. Well done, Neelam. So thank you for your support, Javed, as always as well. So we're now sort of coming towards the end of the program. I'm going to sort of possibly ask you to sort of sum up really from your expertise, and then maybe just ask in terms of what the future holds for businesses out there. For the I mean, it's very hard to predict over the next sort of 12 months, but certainly for the next 6 months, what can they be doing in terms of good practice just to make sure that they are still here in the new year?
Well, look, I think to sum up from with two hats on, but from the Chamber's point of view as well, the Asian Business Chamber, this is a great incentive to support those businesses out there in an ethical way, to give them advice, because as Qasim said, we have experienced people who have been taken advantage of, or fees have been charged, disproportionate fees to do things or take use of or benefit of services that are available. So it's really important that we look at what support, use the number, call in, ask the question, you'll be directed to the right person. In terms of going forward for businesses, we'll see a lot of change, certainly from an employment law point of view.
Yes.
But as a business, don't act in haste as well, because that's what we have. A lot of people acting in haste. Just think about what you're doing, go through the processes, make sure you've implemented all your procedures, and just think about alternatives and something outside the box. Make sure you're legally compliant as well, because the employment regulations, law, they all still stand despite COVID.
Thank you. Real practical advice by Neelam in terms of what you ought to be doing over the next few months in order to make sure you protect your business and you are here in the new year as well. So the time has got the best of us, and I would like to give a huge gratitude to both Cass, who's the president of ABCC, and also Neelam, who's part of the board as well, and she is the HR expert. not only were they here for the last hour giving you their invaluable experience and advice, they've also given you the website that you can tap into, the ABCC website, and a phone number, the helpline 0121 274 3280. That is open during business hours if you want to know more about the Mind the Gap. It's all about, you know, connect, support, and reaching out to those individuals and businesses that may not think that there is anyone out there for them. So please, you know, reach out, make it easy for yourself, go to the experts that have been there and have got the t-shirt. So thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you once again to both of you. I think the new year holds a very I mean, change is a new constant now, you know, especially with, I mean, I was going to say Brexit, but I stand corrected by Qasim. Now the word is transition, so that's going to happen. You know, I know the negotiations are ongoing, even though they're in the background. So, you know, as Boris Johnson promised that we will be out of Europe come the 1st of January 2021. So on top of everything else, as businesses, you know, in one way it's exciting to be in business because so many things are happening, but at the same time, you know, if you've got a network, an organization with the credibility and the history as ABCC have with over 30 years experience, you know, if you've got them on your shoulder, then you can take on any kind of challenge. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Please continue to safeguard yourself. COVID is still real and out there. And we have seen second peaks along the East Midlands and now some of the West Midlands as well, and certainly some part of Greater Manchester and Yorkshire. So please do not for one moment think that this is over by any stretch of your imagination. Look after yourselves and each other, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So